Well, hi again, and welcome to ChessBase Workshop. I'm Steve Lopez. Thanks for clicking on the link and joining us. In my usual subversive way, I'm actually going to cover a bunch of different topics in this particular ChessBase Workshop. We're going to look at a number of different things that you can do in ChessBase. So I'm not going to stand here and say that there's one overarching, overriding theme to this particular presentation. I'm going to show you at least 3 different things during the course of this presentation. I'm sneaking them in there on you. One of them is, now here's the scenario. I'm in a ChessBase database, one that I got from ChessBase. I'm in the correspondence database, as a matter of fact. And I'm looking at this interesting correspondence game. And the reason why it's interesting to me is this, that the fellow who's playing black was actually tearing them up in this tournament. He's winning most of his games in this tournament. He's doing it in particularly good fashion. And I was just interested in looking at this one particular game because his opponent played something really odd. I wanted to make some notes to the game, but I don't normally make notes in my ChessBase databases that I get from ChessBase. Whether it's the correspondence database, the mega database, whether it's the opening encyclopedia. And the reason why is because when I get a new one each year, I just replace the old one with the new one. And that way I don't have to worry about losing my notes. Any notes I make into a separate database. So the first task then is to copy this game that I found interesting from the one database to the other. How do you do that? How do you copy a game in ChessBase? Very simple. I've got the game highlighted down here in the database preview pane at the bottom of the screen here. All I do is I right click on the highlighted game. I go to edit and I select copy. Now, it's going to look like nothing happened, but what I've just done is I've told ChessBase I want to copy this game. Now, where does it go? Well, I've got a database over here called Various Analysis, and I can right-click on it and select Edit and select Paste. It's going to confirm you want to copy this one game from Correspondence Database 2011 to Various Analysis. Well, heck yeah! We click Yes. It copies the game, and then I can go into Various Analysis, double-click, come down here, double-click on the game, and there we are. Okay? What I want to do, I'll show you what I found interesting. D4, D5, E3. Now that's something you don't see every day. Normally when you see D4, D5, you're going to see C4 a ton of times. So the fact that white opted for E3, I just found that interesting immediately. So I'm going, well, how often does this occur? Is this a book move? And I'm sure it is, but I just want to see some numbers. So I go over here, I'm looking at the notation pane here, I go across these tabs at the top of it to Openings Book. I click on Openings Book, and I see that basically we've jumped ahead a couple of moves. It's showing me what comes next. I mean, knight F6. I have to back up to see where E3 ranks. But the weird part is I'm looking at the Fritz 12 opening book, and that's not where I want to be. Reason being is Fritz 12, that opening book concentrates mainly on openings that are good for computers, not necessarily the full corpus of opening theory as it applies to human beings. That's what Power Book is for. So I want to load the Power Book opening book. How do I do that? Here's the other thing we're doing here. We showed you how to copy a game. Now we're going to show you how to load an opening book. In case you don't know how to do it, you go to the application menu. That's this round button in the upper left hand corner of the screen. Click on it to pull it down. Go to Open and then Openings Book. Excuse me. Here's my different opening books, and I think we're going to pick Power Book 2011. Fire that in there, and look here under the little picture of the tree, it now says PowerBook 2011.ctg, and now I've got some numbers for E3. Doesn't get played a heck of a lot here in the full corpus of opening theory of which PowerBook is made from. In this position we're in comes up 133,000 times, and only 371 times is E3 played, and it tends to be a little bit better for black than for white. So E3 gets played here. We go to the next move, and notice that as you're playing through a game, it's still there in the notation tab. As you're playing through a game with the Openings Book tab selected, what was actually played in the game is always highlighted with a black bar. So I'm using the cursor keys on the keyboard, by the way, to play through the game. That's my preferred method, but you can use the VCR buttons if you display them under the board. Right-click, go to Board Design, Replay arrows below board. Pick, in this case, I'll pick buttons and click OK. And now I've got buttons under here. There's the third thing I've showed you, third tip. But I'm still going to use the keyboard. Now we see that bishop d3 gets played here. And then knight c6, which drops it down to a pretty low number of games. Only 23 games does this occur. And I'm kind of interested in seeing what happens if black plays c5. Kind of a reverse queen's gambit. So, and I'm not a d4 player, by the way. So this is all kind of new to me. I'm primarily an e4 player. So I will click on c5, and notice, do I want, this is the move that was there, knight c6, do I want a new variation, new main line, overwrite or insert? I want a new variation. Then c3, knight c6, f4, which is kind of cool, but I want to see knight f3. Well, we'll look at f4 first. Bishop g4, knight f3, then e6, and then castles, and then we'll back up. And what happens with knight f3? Oh, we'll take new variation here. e6 most of the time. Knight b d2, bishop d6, castles, castles. D takes c5, bishop takes c5. And then there's, well, e4. And then there's different things. We'll say queen c7, and we'll stop there. Now, why did we do all this? We just went through the opening book. We put in some moves right out of PowerBook 2011. We played through a lot of different variations out of PowerBook. Why? Watch what happens when we go back to the notation tab. And what we have here is a admittedly small tree of moves. The main variation we were following, and then when I took that side trip down the knight f3 path. Well, let's click on knight f3, go back to the openings book. What happens if white castles here? New variation. Bishop d6, knight b d2. Notice this. This position, as you see here, has happened in 106 games. Bishop d6 only happens in 78 games, but once you click on it, it's transposed. And now if knight b to d2 gets played, it transposes into a variation that gets played a whole bunch more. So this is a good way to find transpositions as well. That looks awfully familiar. So we'll go back here to notation, and what we find is it's the same position. We got there two different ways. Special annotation, critical opening position, special annotation, critical opening position. Now they're both highlighted in blue, and when we click on them, we see it's the same variation. How do we do this? We went to the openings book and just started going through some variations, and notice that it all gets put into the notation pane. So this has just become a note to this game that I was going over. That's kind of what I wanted to show you, but I kind of backed into it by showing you several other things first. But you can use the opening book. You can load an opening book by going to the application menu, selecting open, and then openings book. Load an opening book, and then use that to add opening references to a game that you're going over. If you decide you want to save this information, if I was to say, well, this is pretty cool, I'd like to keep that as notes to this game, all I got to do is go here, application menu, save, and then replace. Click OK, and there it is. And it is now part of this database. I've decided to keep these notes. That's why I did it in a separate database rather than in Correspondence Database 2011, because when I get a Correspondence Database 2012, I can just delete 2011, put 2012 on the hard drive, and not lose my notes. My notes are in a separate database where I keep different analysis that I'm playing around with. So there you go. There's not one overarching theme to this little presentation, but I did show you several little things that you can do with ChessBase. That's what I was out to do. In my own sneaky, devious, underhanded way, I decided to show you several things in this presentation instead of just one. But this is just me doing some stuff in ChessBase. People ask me all the time, how do you use it? What's the kind of thing you do with ChessBase 11? this is an example, just one of many, of just me sitting here doing some stuff in ChessBase 11, just trying to improve my chess knowledge by looking at basically what happens after d4, d5, e3, which is just, I thought was rather odd. I expected c2 to c4. So we took a look, and there's different ways that it can go, and it frequently transposes, which is interesting as well. So that's it. Just showed you a few things in ChessBase 11. No, nothing earth-shattering, but just some stuff you can do in the software. Till next time around, for ChessBase Workshop, I'm Steve Lopez. Please do have fun.